So good morning, everyone. And I just want to do something here. I want to introduce Anna Garrica Sarah. Last week on Friday, she was Sarah, and now she's Anna Garrica Sarah. And so for those who weren't able to come to the ceremony, the photos are up on the gallery section of our website. So you can have a peek. So we've just finished our series on the hindrances, and that was like a big mouthful. It was a lot of information. So I felt the need to have some kind of a summary. So today, Ayya Ahimsa and I are going to give a summary of at least the antidotes to the hindrances. And of course, our recordings are available. So if you want to go over and review, you can do that. So I just want to sort of paint the big overall picture, the big overall picture of our practice, which of course is to end suffering, is we have a meditation object that we sit down and we focus on our meditation object that brings us into stillness, and ideally into the stillness of jhanas. And then when we emerge from that, then we can gain insights into the impermanence and unsatisfactoriness and non-self nature of everything. And this leads to our ability to awaken to the truth and to end all our mental suffering. So unfortunately, it's not a smooth progress, because when we sit down to do that, we get these things called the hindrances that come in the way. And so we have to take little side trips to deal with them. So the question is, when do you take a side trip and when do you not? So the rule of thumb that I've been taught is, if you're with your meditation object and you're staying with it, but you can sort of hear some murmurings off there in the background, then you just ignore the murmurings, just let them be, and just continue to focus on your meditation object. If they actually sort of grab your attention, but you notice instantly that your attention has been grabbed by one of the hindrances, and you're able to just go, oh, this is happening, and then bring yourself back, then again, we just stay with our meditation object. But when they sort of like grab us and keep us grabbed and we're having trouble, then that's when we want to employ all of these antidotes that we've been studying over the last many weeks. So what I want to do is talk about, first of all, sort of some general antidotes that we can use for all of the hindrances. And then we're going to go into each hindrance and talk about sort of specific antidotes for those. And then we're hoping this is going to be very interactive so that you can share with the group suggestions of things that have worked for you. So a really an important teaching of the Buddha was Majjhima Nikaya 20, which is the 5 ways to stop thinking. So when I think of the hindrances, sort of in my mind, I put them into thoughts and emotions. So if it's a thought, then I employ what the Buddha taught in that particular sutta. And if it's an emotion, then I use what we've been calling the holding technique. That was Thich Nhat Hanh's name for that. So the 5 ways to stop thoughts, I'm just going to go over them extremely briefly, and they're, of course, in more detail if you go back and listen to the talks. So if we get pulled away by the hindrance of thinking, then we want to substitute that thinking with some kind of a wholesome, something wholesome. So as I said, if you've just been briefly pulled away, then you just come back to your meditation object. So that's what you're putting your wise attention on is your meditation object. But if it's where it's grabbing you and not letting you come back, then you may want to change to a different wholesome object. So like if there's ill will or anger coming up, then you may want to bring in metta. Or if there's restlessness, maybe you want to switch to walking meditation, etc. So that's step one. If that's not effective, then you examine the danger. Like what's the danger of this hindrance that's come up? If that's unsuccessful, then the Buddha says, well, forget about it. So the way you do that is distract yourself. So find something to distract your attention. That doesn't work, then you sort of stepwise bring down the agitation or whatever. The analogy he gives is instead of running, walk, instead of walking, stand still, instead of standing still, sit, instead of sitting, lie down. So it's just gradually bringing it down. It was one of my fellow Upasakans who has a son that has mental illness. And so there's always these recurring crises. And just as a mother, she's just always, worrying about her son. And she talked about how she uses this stepwise thing, instead of like freaking out about whatever the incident is, she sort of has put something else into her mind that, maybe she has herself think about maybe the possible steps that she can go through to help her son with whatever the crisis is. So she's still thinking, but it's less agitating than the worrying. And then she'll move from there to something a little bit more calming, and then from there to something else, still thinking, but more calming until gradually she can let go. And then the final step in the 5 ways to stop thinking is that one where you're pressing your tongue against the top of your mouth and gritting your teeth. And I always usually think about this one as if you have this urge or you're feeling angry and you're going to say something that's very unskillful. So like press those lips together and don't let it come out. Okay, so for me, I always think about that if there's thoughts going on in my head. If it's emotions, then it's the holding technique. We lovingly hold our attention on that emotion, like find it where it physically is in the body, lovingly hold your attention on it, just like you'd lovingly hold a hurt child. And because you're not feeling it with your thoughts, because you're down in your body, holding your attention on the emotion where you're physically feeling that emotion, then there's no fuel for it, so it eventually dies out. Okay, another sort of overall sort of universal antidote for the hindrances when they come up is, instead of like, catch yourself using the word my or I, like my anger, my disappointment, my desire, like I want, or I'm angry, or whatever, is to step back and go, oh, anger has arisen. Oh, desire has arisen. Oh, restlessness has arisen. Just gives you more space to sort of depersonalize it and then give you the space to look at, oh, it's arisen, so there must be a cause and condition. What could that cause and condition be? The next sort of universal antidote is wise attention. So just noticing throughout the day and also during your meditation sitting practice, what are you paying attention to? Is it something wise? Is it something wholesome? And in Buddhism, the definition of wholesome is it's leading away from suffering, and the definition of unwholesome is it's causing suffering. If you listen to the first talk that we gave on the hindrances, the sort of the introduction to them, there was a whole list of supportive conditions that we can have in our life. So I just encourage you to re-listen to that talk. Things like living morally and, being kind and generous, like having sort of this huge baseline of supportive conditions that we can put into our life that then make it less likely for the hindrances to pop up. The next universal antidote is to cultivate contentment. Contentment with what is, the reality of what is. Another technique is to keep the mind peaceful during the day, and maybe you can have mindfulness bells. You could set a little thing on your phone or something to give a little ding every half hour, and then you can just sort of bring yourself back to, am I being peaceful? And is my attention wise? The next antidote is that tapping technique. And if you weren't here for those, then they're laid out in the talks that we gave. This tapping technique that can help bring down the hindrances. And then the other important thing is that when the hindrances arise is to welcome them, not to be upset or angry with them. Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to go into the specific antidotes, but are there any comments or discussion on sort of more the universal ones that we can apply in any situation?
I would add one more universal antidote that's in the suttas for every one of the five hindrances, and that is spiritual friendship, wise association. And I think it really points to the non-self nature of each of us, of our lives, that what you're surrounded by has a tremendous influence on what's going on for you internally, what you end up thinking about, what kind of vocabulary you use. I mean, it's very, very strong. And it's just an indicator that we're not these completely separate individual, deciding, driving machines. We're not. We're just part of the phenomena of what's arising and passing away. And anyone that's raised teenagers knows this, that, and it's the same for us. We're not really that much different. I mean, we're not different at all. So what you surround yourself by makes a huge difference. And wise association is actually crucial. It's essential. It's interesting. It's the only condition that's essential on the path that's external. Everything else is our internal working. But we wouldn't even start our internal working without that exterior influence.
Yeah, the Buddha told Ananda that it was the whole of the spiritual life.
I think that's another one of, you come to spiritual practice and then you begin to learn and feel and be exposed to all these paradoxes. Spiritual life is full of paradoxes. I think this is where the Zen koan comes from. And honestly, if you read the suttas, Kalyanamitta, spiritual friendship, wise association, 100% of the path. Our own efforts, our own cleaning up our act, 100% of the path. It's not 50-50, it's 100%, 100%. This is one of these spiritual paradoxes. And I think another part of that paradox, and you get it when you're reading the suttas, this seemingly conflict between community and wise association, the voice of another, going to your spiritual friends, and solitude and seclusion. These are two other things that have a seemingly tension between them. And yes.
So I believe wholeheartedly in that, in being around wise association, and then I'm challenged by the idea of divisiveness around not wanting to be around someone that we sort of deem as unwise, and we were in Vancouver and we had this experience of not really wanting to. Lori was helping her with double knee replacement, and she's just has some unwholesome, unkind ways about her, and we've always sort of known that. But so we've sort of said, well, we just can't be around that. But then it feels like that we're, creating this idea of judgment and division, and so we're challenged with that, and because it is unwholesome, it actually creates so much lack of peace in ourselves being around it, that unkindness, that anger, that so
I other people can speak to this too. I would say two things. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to then also
Yeah.
add is, when we talk about a moral life and our generosity, where's the line of that generosity? Because I think that's what that is. Do we want to be generous?
Mhm.
And we know it's unwholesome, but there's this part of me that wants to do something about it. And I feel in my life that's the case a lot. So I have to really revisit that. But where's my line?
Mhm. I think, these are very personal choices, and I think the line changes as you develop. I think the bottom line in the suttas, when I read the suttas, is if wholesome states are increasing and unwholesome states are decreasing, then this is something that you want to bring into your life more. And when, I think what you're bringing up, Corey, is a reaction that many of us have when we read the Mangala Sutta, like don't associate with people of foolish ways. It's like, well, what about my mom? These kind of things. And so I think the framework is useful to work with. And you have that now. You realize, oh, when I am with this person, this is the impact that it has on me. Even that framework is new for us, I think that it is very wholesome when you are needing to interact or be with people that are foolish, that or exhibiting foolishness, foolish ways. And this is true of many of us. We were having to go to work, and lots of our colleagues had very different moral standards, and I think it can be very wholesome to be authentic and to just be like, oh, when you talk like that, it's hard for me. I find it agitating. What it does is it keeps the relationship authentic. It helps you not fall into resentment, and it also gives that other person an opportunity to hear something very wholesome, to I'm not, and you're just doing it to be authentic and be real in the situation. And then you can even say, and it's hard for me to be, especially if it's a voluntary situation or a friendship, and it's hard for me to be around for, like extended periods.
Mhm.
And then it's real. And you're not expecting them to change, but you're not denying them the possibility that they could rise up. And I think that you just, titration, this term titration, it's like, it's borrowed from chemistry, putting two really potent compounds or substances together. And if you do it all at once, but you can do drip by drip. So yeah, when we can, I mean, sometimes these are our relatives, sometimes these are people we live with, these are people we work with. And so you have to, every situation is different and has a different solution. But titration is like, yes, so there's not this cutoff, there's not this boundary of like, no, you swear I simply can't be around you, I actually swear. So does Sanghamitta.
I've heard you both.
But you're also being careful.
Mhm. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it feels gutless to not do anything.
Yeah.
So it feels like
Yeah.
you're just sort of almost contributing to it
Yeah.
in a way by being around it continuously.
Yeah. I heard this term from Ajahn Sona and it changed my life. Because I was, I just had a lot of conditioning I was a single mom and I had aging parents, I was that whole sandwich generation and I had a lot of conditioning around and it was very unwholesome. I had a lot of identity around being a rescuer and being a helper, and I was a speech pathologist. I worked with children with developmental disability. I was just like, it was crazy. But Ajahn Sona just dropped this phrase one time. He said, "Not good for you, not good for me." And somehow that was an opening of a door for me, because I couldn't just do something because it was the right thing for me because of all of the conditioning I had. But when I realized, oh, it's not good for you to be taking advantage of me and be, overextending me, and it's not good for me. Plus, I had started to meditate and I'd started to see all of the unwholesome resentment and da. But that phrase, not good for you, not good for me. And that's what I think you're picking up on, Corey. Like, yeah, it's not good for them that I just let them yell at me and, take advantage of me. And like, it's not wholesome.
Except for that they think it's good for you, that they use you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but if you get clear,
right,
then if you get really clear, like this is the wholesome, this is the way to go in this situation. If you get clear, then it changes everything energetically.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, bit by bit, I'm stopping drinking wine, and the person I drank with the most was my sister. And she had a vision that, we'll get old together and we'll live together and we'll drink together. And finally, I took the 5 precepts and then I remember, okay, now this is the one I need to, and I realized, oh, I need to be so clean and clear inside myself. This is something I really don't want to be doing. So the first time we're out together and she's suggesting, drinking a glass of wine. And I just turned and I said, yeah, I've really figured out it's a short-term solution to a long-term problem. And I don't want to do it anymore. And then that was it. She did, because I was so clear and I knew what I was going to say.
when I first started this meditation group almost 30 years ago, I was on a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, and he was encouraging all of us to start meditation groups back home. And he said, you really have to start like with a small group of really, healthy people that like it's a good solid group. And then he said, once you have that solidity and support, then you might be able to take the odd person who's, having difficulties, because you can absorb that because of the solidity of the rest. So it's like in our individual lives, how deep is our practice? How much support do we have that's healthy? Like, what's our environment like that's healthy? And then maybe we can spend some time to help somebody who's, got real difficulties because we've got this other solidity. But if we're really fragile and we don't have really anybody in our life, our environment, isn't supporting us, then that's going to be a way different situation being with a person like that.
Yeah, for me, it's like, I like to refer to it as building up my spiritual bank account. So when I'm going to visit family, I do that. I build up my spiritual bank account so that I'm feeling the stronger foundation going into because we usually know when we're going to encounter those people. Sometimes it's out of the blue, but generally, yeah.
Okay, do you want to start with desire?
You know what? I had more. Okay, this isn't specifically about desire, but I do want to say my experience is that things get worse before they get better. That's my experience, that as I started to meditate, because I just, stopped all of the distractions and all of the busyness and all of the escape hatches that I had, devised in my life. Just hanging out with my own mind was meditation is not just, taking a walk in the meadow and smelling all the roses. You're taking a walk inside, and all of the things that are yet undigested in your life will in time come up and present themselves. And I just want to reassure everyone that this is very normal. This is actually good. It's good. It's very much like what Kusala was just saying. For our own lives individually, when we start to meditate and then we start to have a life that's a little bit, it's more moral, it's more grounded, it's more steady. We've done what Kusala said. We've put some things into our spiritual bank account, and then we realize how in debt we are. We realize, there are these things I've ignored, these things I thought would just go away. There's these ways I've used of coping that are actually, they're not helping at all, etc., etc. So I just want to really encourage people, if things seem actually harder and more bumpy, this can be a very good sign. It means that you're actually meditating, and it can really change. I really think the key thing that I feel like I'm beginning to learn and understand so much better is to be friends with these things. Like lots of metta. Metta is, you can't do this path without metta. And to really, a lot of metta and honoring, a lot of the things that are inside, they're unattended and undigested, are like, I'm experiencing them like a snotty-nosed, stringy-haired toddler having a tantrum. And it's essential that we learn to love that toddler. Like it's crucial that we learn to care about it. And I think with the hindrances, it is very much like a toddler. There needs to be some validation. Like, oh, craving is here. It's here. It's arisen. And usually it's arisen, lots of times it's just habit, it's past causes and conditions. Sometimes it's got important information. If you're sitting in meditation and there's a lot of craving or a lot of ill will around situations in your life, there's information there that, oh, that situation needs looking into, that relationship, that those kinds of interactions. I need to take a serious look at them. And sometimes those two cravings in particular, they also might have information about some of our needs. Sense craving. So I'm saying, don't just be trying to have them go away. Like that, which I think I've done that for years. And now I'm understanding more. Because I think I'm getting more precise, clear teaching from Beth Upton. That, sense craving can be arising because there's some need inside of us that we're not aware of yet and we're not in tune with. There might be a need for reassurance or a need for comfort or a need to just relax. And that's why it's, knocking at the door. I'm not saying all the time. Sometimes it's just, a bad habit. Sometimes it's just we're not, somehow something's out of balance and we don't have enough energy for being engaged with our meditation object. But often it's got information, and ill will will have the information of, ill will has a protective nature. That's why when someone comes at us with anger, often anger arises for us because there's a protective quality to ill will. And I mean, it's unwholesome, it's unskillful, but it can have some information about, oh, there's some ways I'm overextending myself, or that I'm just depleted or whatever. So if ill will is really there, it can have some information for you. I think that for me, this is the key. This is what I think wise attention is, that we're responding to the hindrances the way that a very attuned, resourced parent, caregiver would respond to a toddler who's acting out. They would validate that toddler, like, oh, I know you want the bubble gum, like you would validate what's arising, and then care for it, meet it. Yeah.
Yeah, I only had two things down on my list. One is samadhi, the calming, the stilling of the mind. Because that's a very beautiful state to be in. And so that's going to, maybe then the desire won't be there because you're already being satisfied by this still state of the mind, or the stillness can help you look into the things that Ayya was bringing up, like what is the real need that's behind this desire. And then another biggie I mentioned in the universal antidotes is looking at the danger. You know, if I get this thing, is it going to be a lot of work to maintain, or am I going to be frustrated when it wears out or breaks down or gets lost or stolen or whatever? So looking, and yeah, lots of the things, lots of the universal antidotes apply here. Contentment. If we had contentment, then we're not going to be so, desirous of things. So yeah, that's all I had to say about desire. So ill will, as Ayya said, anger can be a protective thing. So for people who've had a lot of trauma in their lives, and so if, it's fight, flight, or freeze, and so if there's anger, then that's the fight part. And so for some people, maybe they'll need some trauma therapy, because it's when we get trauma triggered into that fight, flight, freeze, like the thinking part of our brain shuts down and we're just working on the hindbrain, and so you're not being able to figure things out at that time. And so to get some help to heal that trauma, that can be important. I mentioned in the talk I gave on this is getting out of the energy field of the person or the situation that's triggered this anger in you, because that energy field can really keep your mind clouded or keep you in that triggered situation. For me, the big thing with ill will is the holding technique. I just find that extremely powerful. And when it's a well-oiled tool for you, I remember the first time I used it, it took, I can't remember now, maybe 5 minutes or something to get the anger settled down. Now it's like 15 seconds. Like it just clicks in really fast. Another specific thing is to look at the good qualities of the person who's triggered your anger. Because when we're angry with somebody, we go into tunnel vision. We didn't, their negative aspects, and we're not seeing them as a whole person. And as the Buddha said, if you can't find any good qualities, then have some compassion for the poor sucker. If you're able to, send metta to the person, but if you just get triggered doing that, then this is one of my teachings I had from Ajahn Sona, was don't bring them to mind, just don't bring the person or the situation to mind. Maybe after a couple of months, you can bring it to mind and see if you can work with it or send metta. But if not, leave it for another 6 months or something, and just work on your practice, and you'll eventually have the skills and the strengths to deal with it. But you just may have to leave it aside for some time. Yeah, so if I get triggered, I do the holding technique, and then when I'm calm, that's the time to think about, okay, what's best to do in this situation? Like nothing or something? What's the most skillful thing to say or do? But you want to do that once you're calm, not when you're triggered. If it's not person, if it's a situation, like the weather rained on your picnic or whatever, then if you're angry, you really want to feel the pain of that second arrow that you're stabbing yourself with, not accepting the reality of the situation. Yeah. And then when you're calm, you may want to just look at, okay, what was my past conditioning that led me to flare up like that in this situation? Anything to add, Ayya?
No, it's beautiful. Yeah, there is a sutta that talks about inertia in the mind, and this is an impediment And I think this honestly applies to all of the hindrances. This inertia in the mind that it takes some real consciousness and some energy to meet the hindrance that's arising, because that's now the energy in the mind, and so there's inertia, there's some momentum to it. So that's one of the challenges with the hindrances. I think that's why there's all of this emphasis on welcoming them and trying to care for them, because that's a very different energy than what they're bringing. So it just this concept, it's actually in the suttas, this idea of inertia, and it's an impediment in the mind. And anger, I think, is the one that's the most, like, it's so easy. It's the path of least resistance for anger to be met with more anger, and we do that externally, but we do it internally too. When there's ill will, it's sort of coloring everything. And often we can have ill will to the ill will, more aversion or, frustration, whatever. Yeah.
I don't know if I quite understand what you meant by inertia, because inertia is when you're stuck, you're not moving.
Well, in physics, inertia is that, something's going like downhill, and there's an inertia to it, right? It's got a momentum. And for it to change or slow down, it needs a force from a different direction.
Okay, I wasn't familiar with that.
Yeah.
That meaning. Okay, thank you. Okay, you want to lead off lethargy and drowsiness?
We're almost at time. I'm wondering if we just open it up. If someone has a question,
should we do another week on this?
No time. Figure that out. We could ask people if they want, more talk about the hindrances. More about
Is it like I'm padding now, or do you want? Yeah, we've only got the first two covered, so
they're the big ones.
Yeah,
I would say
they're the biggies.
And that thing I would say, like dullness and drowsiness, it lots of times it's actually got a lot of desire or ill will that's feeding it, if it's big. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Please.
So I just want to say that today, of all the sessions that I've ever been here, has most likely hit home most. For some reason, it's hit me really hard. And I also wanted to express my gratitude, because I do see how deep you dig to tell us how hard it was to make a change, or how your life has changed. It makes me realize how much more work I have to do. And in those 5 months that I've been here now, I have realized how much turmoil these sessions have been in my life, because all of a sudden now that tower is crumbling and now I have to rebuild, and I have no idea what that looks like. And I can't tell you how frightening that is. I stand in front of nothing technically, and the tower hasn't even crumbled 100%, but it's just those pieces that want to break off now. It's like, wow, I know nothing else but this. So
Totally.
here I am, all naked, empty, what does this look like? So I just want to say that today, this is like, whoa, okay, more of that. Please. But thanks for all you do, because it's really very, very helpful.
Silke, I really want to thank you. I'm so excited. I was so excited after we talked at Anna Garika's ceremony. I came in, Silke, she was working with hindrance for 24 hours. Like she's really doing it. She's doing the work. I was just so happy for you. And it is. It's not like that for everyone. In the suttas, it's clear. Some people, their path is quick and pleasant. Some people it's slow and pleasant. Some people it's quick and painful. And some people it's slow and painful. And I mean they're all four. And yeah, I very much had the same experience, and it was so scary. And my kids, this was obviously before I became a nun, and my children it was very difficult for them. They're like 19, 20, 21. They're like, Mom, it's like you died. Because I mean, I did, like all of I mean, it was a huge party. Like, anyway, I'm not gonna go into it. But and I experienced it as a bit of no person's land. Like everything that I had, built my life on, it was falling away. But not a lot had come. And see, not everyone has that experience. Some people, they have very beautiful, pleasant, beautiful experiences in meditation that are immediately drawing them and replacing. For some people, the old is falling away and the new hasn't really come yet. So I just want to say that, yeah, I found it scary. I found it, it just was going so fast. But I think it's a sign that, your heart is open and hearing the Dhamma and responding to it. I just want to normalize it. I had the same experience.
Yeah, so I'll second that entirely. This is a huge change potentially. And one teacher I listened to suggested that one of the things that makes the mind more steady through that process is really having that strong base of goodness, knowing that you have done good things, that you are generous, kind. This is very stabilizing when the mind understands that, big parts of my personality are starting to change or disappear. And there isn't really a clear replacement yet. So I have had that experience as well, very much so.
I would just add to what Nadine just said too, is that just having the courage to be able to see what you've done and how you've contributed, and then being able to just talk about it and sort of shift the mind and back to what Nadine said is generosity and kindness, even for yourself. But looking at it and just examining and having those tools, was this wholesome? Was this unwholesome? It wasn't, well, I don't like that. But being kind to yourself, I think, is the most important part of it.
And that's really where spiritual friendship becomes crucial. Just being around other people that have had that experience and can normalize it for you and can support you and reassure you and encourage you.
Yeah, I like it in reference to the onion analogy. The layers of the self. And peel a layer and cry. Peel a layer and cry. Peel a layer and cry.
Yeah. And do you know what Bhante Gunaratna says about the onion? And this is very, very sutta based. The Buddha gave that analogy, gave a plantain tree, which is what they would be familiar in India, but it's the same as an onion. It's just layers and there's. But do you know this? Bhante Gunaratna goes, onion. You go on and on with an iron. Iron. So good. So clever.
Any comments from our Zoom room?
Just thank you. I'm sitting here listening in the basement, so it's all good. Appreciate it very much.
It's dark in there.
Sharon, we're not seeing your beautiful picture. You're drawing.
Zoom update. To make a long story short. But no, thank you so much. I agree with everything everyone's said. I've had some very hair-raising experiences on retreats, and it's taken a while to process it. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Anyone else?
just to say thank you, to look at the things again. I find that today I'm really going to have to think about wise association, because it would mean a complete change in the way that I live my life. I mean, it would mean I'm thinking of yesterday where someone visited and then someone visited and then someone visited, and I sat most of the day nodding kindly. I would have to resort how I spend so much of my time. So I'm thankful for that phrase, wise association. It's gonna need some thought. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for Corey bringing it up.
Can I just say one short?
Yeah.
So as I told us, Maryland, you have to have the Calientes. Maryland, you have to develop more Calientes. And the first time I was really annoyed with them, I thought, you know, my friends, I have 40 years, my friends, and you know, look at fifth time you said that to me. And I thought, well, maybe I'll take this a little more seriously. And what I found though was initially there was a hole, but as I started to understand and people were falling away, if they were falling away, the hole got smaller and smaller and smaller.
Okay, we're going to end today with karuna, compassion. So first of all, if you'd like to bring to mind someone that you know with great physical or mental suffering, and while being aware of their particular difficulties, direct these compassionate phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. And now send these compassionate phrases to yourself. May I be free of pain and sorrow. May I find peace. Now bring to mind someone who's been very supportive of you and send the phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. Now think of a neutral person, someone you don't have strong feelings of like or dislike towards, and send the phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. Now think of someone who's very difficult and send the phrases to them. May you too be free of your pain and sorrow. May you too find peace. May all beings be free of pain and sorrow. May all beings find peace. Remember that all beings face great potential suffering, no matter how fortunate their immediate circumstances may be. This meditation does not eliminate suffering. What we are doing is being able to acknowledge suffering, to open to it and respond to it with a tenderness of heart, which allows us to join with all beings and realize we are never alone. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Lynn, Kelly, Iman, Ryan, Blair, Eric, Lise, Jen, Perez, Rose, Russell. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone.